Turner, who served as British ambassador to Ukraine up to 2012 and is author of a new book that we will discuss, very new actually. It was published yesterday. Two things to take out, if we can, Mr. Turner, from what the Mr. Zelensky said there. One is he hints at, and has said before, there seems to be a sort of decline in the level of support from the new government as opposed to previous administration, perhaps shown yesterday by so few words from Sir Keir. Your take on that? Morning to you.
Morning, yes. What we're looking at is a contrast between the current new-ish Labour government and the former government, the Conservatives, where Boris Johnson in particular, like him or loathe him, took a very high-profile line on supporting Ukraine and was a cheerleader for helping Ukraine in a big way, whereas Sir Keir Starmer, like him or not, he's got a lot of other things on his plate that he's focusing on, mostly domestic policy, and he hasn't been so vocal. But there's been no sign that there's actually any reduction in UK support, but it's not so evident.
What should we take from what President Zelensky said on ABC News yesterday? We're closer to the peace, we're closer to an end. Lee?
Well, two things there. I mean, first of all, Zelensky has what he calls a peace plan. We don't really know what's in it, but we think it involves beefing up Ukraine's military capabilities and allowing them to use these long-range Western missiles to make clear that there is no path to victory for Russia. And we should never forget, second thing, that Russia is weaker than it likes to pretend. Like all authoritarian regimes, they try to portray strength. But there was a recent analysis, for example, of 18,000 Russian soldiers who'd been killed in this combat, whose obituaries have appeared in the newspaper. And it showed that their ages, the ages of those poor people who are dying, I mean, we should feel sorry for them as well as for the Ukrainians who are being attacked. Their average age has increased to nearly 40. Russia's running out of soldiers, as well as its economy being in a terrible state. So we shouldn't assume that Ukraine can't win this war.
What realistically can Zelensky achieve over the next few days?
Well, he wants to have permission to use these long-range missiles within Russia. There's no reason why he shouldn't be able to do that. At the moment, it's a bit of a mismatch that Russia can get ballistic missiles from North Korea or long-range drones from Iran and use them to bombard Ukrainian cities across the country. But Ukraine has these long-range missiles that it's not allowed to use. So you can see that that's a mismatch. And Zelensky will be hoping he can use those missiles, although honestly, Nick, that's not the most important thing. I mean, it would be helpful, but what we need is long-term major support for Ukraine, because if Ukraine loses this war and Russia bites out 20% of the country or more and incorporates it into Russia, then all of us in the UK and the rest of the world are facing a very uncertain future where any country can invade its neighbour and start occupying it, and that's not in our interests.
Lastly on this, a key position on the chessboard could change radically in a little over a month or so with a new, well, it will be a new US president, it'll definitely be a new US president. What might that bring to the dynamic?
Well, the Ukrainians are rightly very concerned about what Donald Trump and his team have been saying about Ukraine and about the war with Russia, that they might cut support. And that could have a really big impact on the war if that were to happen. We saw in the past for several months the US withheld their support because Republicans in the Senate and in the House of Representatives were holding up aid. And during that time, Russia made major advances. So Ukraine will be hoping that whoever comes to power in Washington in the November elections will continue to support Ukraine so that Russia doesn't win this war.
We talk regularly. I'd like a quick word on the book, which I've got my information correct, was published yesterday, Lee. Lessons in Diplomacy, Politics, Power and Parties. What will listeners learn if they get themselves a copy? Lee.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Nick. The book is supposed to be a kind of fun, accessible guide to what the hell it is that diplomats actually do. I mean, what do diplomats do?
Well, they eat Ferrero Rocher chocolates, don't they? Isn't that what it's
quite exactly. That's what everybody thinks. And I do actually mention Ferrero Rocher chocolates in the book. And so I'm trying to describe what diplomats and ambassadors actually do behind the scenes and what lessons we can all learn from that, whether it's when a bomb goes off outside or whether it's when you're in the Argentine foreign ministry talking about the Falkland Islands and you find a piece of broken glass in your fruit salad. How should you respond?
Well, I was going to ask a career high and a career low. I think I've got the low, which is broken glass in your fruit salad. What gave you the most pleasure in your career, Lee?
Well, I must say that being an ambassador is an enormous privilege when you're serving your country like that. If you're in any doubt as a British ambassador about the importance of your job, when you have 15 minutes with your head of state, for me it was Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, of course, before you go on your posting, and she tells you how important your job is, and she asks you some well-informed questions about the country you're going to, that leaves you in no doubt about how important your job is. And being an ambassador certainly is a privilege and a challenge.
The book is Lessons in Diplomacy, Politics, Power and Parties. The author is Lee Turner. Lee, thanks for coming on, and thanks for your observations, of course, as well, in your